Welcome to the Swiftly Spoken Eras Recap, a countdown to the Eras Tour. In this final episode in the short series, we're going to be speaking about both Folklore and Evermore. We chose to combine these two in this last week leading up to the Eras Tour and make this episode slightly different to our previous era recaps, as we already have two long-form, in-depth album retrospectives that are solely dedicated to both Folklore and Evermore. We won't be going over these eras as we have done with the previous 7, but if you would like to know all about them and hear all about their chronology, the stories behind each and every one of the songs, the reception and the legacy of both of these albums, then we do highly encourage you to check them out.
The key thing to mention though with the Folklore and Evermore eras is the massive genre shift that Taylor embarked on. Her previous albums, 1989, Reputation and Lover, had obviously all been pop albums, whereas Folklore and Evermore, Taylor decided to venture into the more indie, acoustic and folk sound. Additionally, in these episodes, we also usually explore performances and their stats and kind of guess what we might see on the Eras Tour, but due to these albums having had minimal in-person promo and performances, there's not really much to be said. So instead, we're combining both albums and focusing on what may become an acoustic set on the Eras Tour that could possibly include the slower songs off of Folklore and Evermore.
Like we mentioned, there are no real concert performances for these songs. However, some of them have been played live or in a live-ish setting. So for example, for Folklore, technically we have had performances for every single song off the album if we consider the Long Pond studio sessions live performances. They are, changed up. The songs are a little bit different to what is on the album. It's a really beautiful rendition of the entire album with them playing live music together, however with no audience or no people around them, which does make a very, very big difference. Apart from that though, Cardigan and August were played at the Grammys. They were mashed together and they were played in such an amazing remix. Then we also got Exile when Taylor performed at the Bon Iver concert. And finally, we also got a performance of Betty at the ACMs. In terms of Evermore, there's really not much at all in comparison. If Folklore is a poor show, then Evermore is unfortunately even worse. Of course, due to the circumstances at that time, it makes sense. But despite rumours, we never actually got a Long Pond studio session type of performance for the album, even though a lot of people really, really did want that. The only things that we have got are snippets from this album. So there was a snippet of Willow performed in that Grammys remix that I just have mentioned. So we got Cardigan August and then it went into Willow, and it was such an amazing rendition of that song. We have spoken about it before, how it is basically the best remix of Willow. And finally, the only other thing that we can mention is that we did also get a snippet of Taylor singing Champagne Problems, kind of acoustically with Aaron Dessner playing the piano in the background. She uploaded that to celebrate, I think it was Evermore's Grammy nominations, to her Instagram, and ever since then, we haven't got anything else from either of these albums. So that's all we've got. And with that being said, there's not much to say except for discuss things that we think we might be lucky enough to get perhaps in that acoustic moment in the Eras Tour. Putting that to aside for a minute, are there any songs that you think stand out from these two albums that could be mainstays on the Eras Tour set list?
I think, it's really interesting looking at the kind of lack of performances, and obviously we've been basing, even with the Lover era and there was a reduction in terms of performances, there was still enough to go off of, whereas it's really hard to kind of pick, and I think that because of that, what I'm thinking is most likely, and also because of the nature of Folklore and Evermore, unlike Taylor's other albums, obviously Folklore and Evermore are very acoustic, and some kind of acoustic songs and kind of slower songs aren't really kind of don't kind of land well live. Like imagine like Closure live, it just wouldn't really work, and that's not a kind of, that's not a negative towards the songs, it's just some songs aren't like that, and some work better in a live setting, some go off, others are intended to, be consumed solo in a kind of quiet room by yourself. And I just think that sometimes some of the songs on Folklore and Evermore are more leaning to that. So because of that, I would then pick the pop leaning songs, and obviously that is a very loose term because these are not pop albums, but the songs that kind of stand out in terms of songs that get radio play or have been singles make the most sense from these albums because of the nature of them. So because of that, off of Folklore, I feel like there's probably four that I think are, for me, the ones I definitely feel like are most likely. So obviously the lead single, Cardigan, I think that makes sense really for that to be on there. Obviously, big lead single, very successful, has had a bit of a moment on TikTok as well. I think, yeah, Cardigan definitely. I also feel like August, which we mentioned before, I feel like is the pop moment on Folklore. If you're going to pick a pop moment, August seems to be the most logical. I feel like that would definitely work really well live. I think people would love it. It would like go off. And I also feel like, ironically, the other songs that I think are most likely are also the other ones that have been performed in a kind of live setting. So I think Betty's quite likely, and I do feel like Exile as well, possibly. I don't know if about both of them, but those are the four off of Folklore. And in terms of Evermore, I feel like, again, it'll be quite similar with what we've heard live. I think Willow, as I mentioned in a previous episode as well, I feel like it's the most pop moment on Evermore, and obviously it's the lead. And I do feel like Champagne Problems in a kind of acoustic piano setting, I feel like is the most realistic. So
Right.
the Grammy kind of mashup, I think, might be kind of brought back to life in some sense. And I think, yeah, the ones that we've kind of heard snippets of for me, in terms of, the mainstays on the tour, I think we will definitely get lots of features of Evermore Folklore songs appearing in like surprise song segment. But I think that those are the ones that I'm thinking are kind of going to be on the kind of, mainstay set list. How about you? How are you feeling about it? Because there's not really much to go off of. It's quite hard to predict.
It is. Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. So I definitely do think that kind of Grammy remix could make a comeback, and I would love that. Or in fact, a remix that combines the love triangle 3 songs, so Cardigan, August, and
Yes,
Betty.
I like that idea.
Yeah, and then kind of lead into Willow somehow, perhaps, just because it kind of makes sense. And I do love Willow in that remix, like I've mentioned many times.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely those 3 from Folklore. And then from Evermore, really, I'm Willow, obviously, like just because of what you've mentioned. But other than that, I don't know. I'm not feeling good. Like if I was feeling bad for Reputation, I'm feeling worse for Evermore, honestly. Yeah. As for mainstays and as for big moments in the show that won't be like changed about and taken out. However, going on to talk about what you just mentioned, this acoustic moment on the tour or this surprise song moment, I do think we will see, not every single song, I must say. I don't think we're going to see every single song on Folklore and every single song on Evermore, just because, like we've said in previous episodes, there are so many songs. So it will be hard.
And also some, you know how some songs Taylor, across lots of albums, Taylor struggles to perform live?
Yeah.
I feel like things like Marjorie or Epiphany and things like that, I just don't think... just aren't really gonna make it. I just don't think, like, they're gorgeous songs. I love both of them, but again, this is what I mean by certain songs just aren't. They're just not made for a live setting. They're made for kind of personal self-reflection, I think. And so yes, and I think there's a lot of songs like that won't make it. But I do think the crux of the albums will definitely, I think, appear in that acoustic set list, definitely.
Yeah, so as for like the surprise songs that I would love to see from these albums, from Folklore, I definitely think things like The Last Great American Dynasty. I'm thinking maybe Mirrorball. I'm not sure. I know people really love that, and I think in like a stadium, like, can you imagine the visuals that could go on with that? That would be cool.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe, but this is probably wishful thinking just because I love the song Invisible String. But other than that, like you said, we have a lot of songs that are very personal, and I don't know if they'd make it. Maybe the one is also pretty good.
The One, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
I was going to say The One.
I can't
but
see things like
Peace or Hoax.
This is it.
Just don't, because it's not really, like, I just can't imagine her kind of playing it with a guitar. It just doesn't. Yeah, there's just certain songs that just don't, as incredible and gorgeous as they are, just are meant for a specific reason and not maybe the live setting. And yeah, I agree with you there, the ones that would make sense. And what about Evermore? What would you feel like?
Yeah.
What are you feeling?
So from Evermore, it does become a bit more difficult just because, as we did mention in our Evermore episode, they are so much more experimental and there's so much more going on behind them. But I do think things like Gold Rush, perhaps.
Yes.
Maybe something like 'Tis the Damn Season or Dorothea.
Yeah.
Maybe
definitely.
Ivy.
Definitely.
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe Long Story Short. That is actually quite a poppy kind of moment within everything. But other than that, this saddens me so much. But things
Right Where
like,
You Left Me?
Yeah, Right Where You Left Me. That's a good one, actually. Yeah. Things like Cowboy Like Me, Coney Island,
Oh,
Happiness.
as much as I adore that song, yeah, I
they're
just
so
don't
good,
know,
but
yeah.
I just can't see them making an appearance. They're just such a different type of song. Like, I'd love it, and if it's
Or
there,
like
I would
or
go off.
It's
But
Time to Go, like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
I don't know. That's just so different to everything else that I don't know. So, are there any that I haven't mentioned that you kind of want to point out?
I think what's interesting to mention off of Evermore is obviously there is a certain artist a band, that is featured on that album that Taylor has two songs with.
Yes.
Are going to be the openers for a couple of shows. And as we mentioned before, previously with openers like Phoebe Bridgers, obviously that Taylor has a song with, it makes sense that they do nothing new. Like, that would be such a lost opportunity and a wasted opportunity if they don't do that when Phoebe Bridgers is there. And I feel like that would be the same with Haim. Obviously, Haim have brought Taylor out. They've done Gasoline before. So I feel like, why not do Nobody No Crime or Gasoline? You know, like, so I feel like
both. Why not both?
Yeah, or both. Yeah, why not mash both and then shove Love Story in there while you're at it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that I think that might appear on the Haim dates. I hope so. I think it would be fun.
I'd love that. Yeah, I definitely would love that.
And I think it would be really cool. And even though Haim aren't like a kind of massive part, they could just kind of do backing vocals and you can almost give, you know, like with Ed Sheeran, where when they used to perform Everything Has Changed, they basically used to perform the remix version where Ed Sheeran gets the whole second verse. I feel like they could do something like that, rather than the studio version, because obviously they're basically just backing vocals.
That's true.
So yeah, I think that Nobody No Crime could appear in that world, but other than that, I only really see the kind of more pop leaning ones with kind of a bigger chorus or a big bridge or something like that being performed, because I just feel like, it's, as we've mentioned before in previous episodes, you have to, as a kind of artist creating a set list, certain artists are really good at creating set lists, and Taylor is one of them, and really good at kind of keeping a crowd engaged, and even during the smaller, kind of quieter, more acoustic songs, then having to build back up again sometimes can be quite difficult. And I've been to shows before where it's like, okay, like we haven't had a hit in a while, you know, we've kind of rattled through some random songs, and I'm thinking, you know, are we gonna? The mood starts to kind of drop a bit, and it can be quite hard sometimes to build it back up. So as I've mentioned before in previous episodes, you can't sit and play like 10 folklore songs, because it would just, you know, like, as incredible and gorgeous as they are, and I'm sure everyone would love it.
I
kind of want
if
the
it was
big
marketed
cruel summer
differently,
moments.
if it was, you know, if it was marketed as, you know, this is the folklore candlelight vigil kind of acoustic set, and people would go to that, I would go to that, like, you know, drop a hat.
100%, it'd be insane.
Yeah, if you know what you're going for, and that is that, then you would go and you would appreciate it all and cry together and that. But when you know that this is like the Eras Tour, like, we're gonna go through bangers, we're gonna go through a lot of songs that, you know, go off, and
it's basically
a lot
like
of energy.
Hits tour.
Yeah, it is. It really, in a way, it really is. So I can understand what you mean with that, and I do think it must be such a tricky thing to organise a set list, especially with so much choice, so many songs to choose from.
So much choice, just mental amount of songs to choose from. So I think, it's gonna. I'm really excited. I'm always excited to see the set list, but I think this time round, there's so much more excitement around the set list. I think just in general across kind of the fandom, because it's just like, what are you going to pick?
Well, it's just it's going to be such a surprise,
Exactly, that's the thing. Whereas before, you know that, you know, Love Story's going to be there, Shake It Off's going to be there, you know, the hits are going to be there, and the new stuff's going to be there. That's normal, you know, that's quite a staple, really, across Taylor's tours. You know, like, even back in the day, it's like, our song's going to be there, Love Story's going to be there, You Belong With Me, and then the new album, you know? And, you know, so it's weird that now it's like, gosh, we just don't really know, because you can't not, a song from each album has to be there. You know, like a song from each album minimum has to be there, because you can't have an Eras Tour and miss something off of debut or Evermore, or Folklore,
especially, you know? When the promotion for it is so, like, inclusive of absolutely every single era.
Every single era. Exactly.
That is why I think we have to be a bit harsh with some of, especially these last two, because of the music on them is so different to other albums. So I think that's why we've been a bit
100%.
harsh. I mean, subjectively, I could go on about how much I want happiness, but I know that it doesn't make sense.
It's just not going to
context.
It's not going to appear.
Yeah.
No, and what's interesting as well is with the promo for the Eras tour, no era so far has taken preference.
No, not even
no
Midnights.
eras had more merch. Nope, no eras had more merch than another. They've all had a T-shirt, and then all of the kind of joint eras, like the phone case, for example, that got released the other day. It's like every single era you could include on the phone case, blanket, all the eras. And then like guitar picks, it's all the eras, like there's not, it's not like 90 to 9 is taking the preference or Midnights or Folklore. It's very much very like even across them. So I think, it's going to be an interesting one. It really is. And I think, the set list is something that I'm really, really excited for and just really intrigued to see how Taylor's going to go about it and what she's going to choose.
With that, we've come to the conclusion of this mini episode. Of course, we didn't have as much to say like we mentioned because we have covered both of these albums in depth before. And as for performances, like we said, there's not really much that we can go from, but those are our guesses. Those are the main songs from the album we think that could make a really, really fun live performance. Let us know what you think in the comments. If you did like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe here on YouTube, as we are going to be continuing with other long form content. For example, next week, which is the week of the Eras tour, we aren't going to be doing a recap episode because the only album that is left to talk about is Midnights, and there's not much to recap at this point since we are in the middle of the whole era. But we are going to be speaking about what we expect to see on the tour from this album, as well as any mashups we think that could lend themselves really well to being on this tour, especially with Midnights in mind. And we're going to just be going over all the last minute details and excitement before the actual tour, which will be 2 days after that episode, which is absolutely crazy. So make sure to subscribe and keep up with us on Instagram. Our handle is @SwiftlySpokenPodcast, where we'll give any information or always let you know when there's a new episode incoming. So with that, we will leave you with this last episode from our crash course through the eras, and with that very exciting last longer form episode coming up next week.